You've heard the war propaganda that is liable to lead us into the sixth war, and I worry about that position. Iran is a threat because they have some militants there. But believe me, they're all around the world, and they're not a whole lot different than others. Iran does not have an air force that can come here. They can't even make enough gasoline for themselves. And here we are, building this case up just like we did in Iraq. Build up the war propaganda. There was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq, and they had nuclear weapons, and we had to go in. I'm sure you supported that war as well. Okay. It's time we quit this. It's time. It's trillions of dollars we're spending on these wars.
President, what would be your strategy for ending the war in Iraq?
Congressman Paul, what would it be?
Just come home. We just marched in. We just come home. We went in there illegally. We did not declare war. It's lasting way too long. We didn't declare war in Korea or Vietnam. The wars were never really ended. We lose those wars. We're losing this one. We shouldn't be there. We ought to just come home because it's in our national self-interest and for our national security. Think of our defenses now, how run down they are. What is the morale of our military today when they're sent over there for 12 months and then they're kept for another 3 months? They come home and less than a year's rest, they're sent back again. Congress is currently trying to change the rules so we give these men an adequate rest. This war is not going well because the foreign policy is defective. Our responsibility is to spread democracy here, make sure that we have it. This is a philosophic and foreign policy problem because what the president was saying was just a continuation of Woodrow Wilson making the world safe for democracy. There's nothing wrong with spreading our values around the world, but it is wrong to spread it by force. We should spread it by setting an example and doing a good job here. Threatening Pakistan and threatening Iran makes no sense whatsoever. We went in, and I supported going after the Al-Qaeda into Afghanistan, but lo and behold, the neocons took over. They forgot about Osama bin Laden, and what they did, they went into nation building not only in Afghanistan, they went unjustifiably over into Iraq. That's why we're in this mess.
Believe in civil liberties? Why should we not be defending civil liberties? And why should we not be talking about foreign policy that used to be the part of the Republican Party? Mr. Republican Robert Taft didn't even want us to be in NATO. And you're saying now that we have to continue to borrow money from China to finance this empire that we can't afford? Let me see if I get this right. We need to borrow $10 billion from China, and then we give it to Musharraf, who's a military dictator who overthrew an elected government, and then we go to war, we lose all these lives promoting democracy in Iraq. I mean, what's going on here? Now we're doing the same thing, and nobody even seems to care. The dollar is crashing, and you're talking about these technicalities about who said what, when. I mean, in 1952, we Republicans were elected to stop the war in Korea. 1968, we were elected to stop the war in Vietnam. And tragically, we didn't stop it very fast. 30,000 more men died. So when I talk about these long-term stays, I think, how many men are you willing to let die for this? For something that has nothing to do with our national security. There were no Al-Qaeda there, had nothing to do with 9/11, and there was no threat to our national security. They never committed aggression. It's unconstitutional. It's an undeclared war. And we have these silly arguments going on about who said what when. I think it's time to debate foreign policy.
And they want to kill us because of who we are and what we stand for. And we stand for American exceptionalism.
As long as this country follows that idea, we're going to be under a lot of danger. This whole idea that the whole Muslim world is responsible for this and they're attacking us because we're free and prosperous, that is just not true. If you have a no-fly zone over Syria, that's an act of war. What if we had China put a no-fly zone over our territory? I don't think we would like that. And I think we should practice a policy of
of goodwill to other people? What about saying that we don't do anything to any other country that we don't have them do to us? When we had a no-fly zone over Iraq, it was meant to be regime change. Evidently, some want to have regime change. But what is our business? Why should we spend more money and more lives to get involved in another war? That is the internal affairs of the other nations, and we don't need another nation to start nation building. We have way too many already. So this is just looking for more trouble. I would say, why don't we mind our own business?